What scientific experiment would you run if money and ethics weren't an issue? I'd raise a group of children from birth to adulthood, kinda a Truman Show thing, without any contact with music and see how it affects their lives and personalities. I'd make sure everything else would be normal but music would be edited out of their lives. What could be really interesting is if you only played them music in odd time signatures like 5/8 or 7/8 and saw how their music developed from there. Our music is based mainly around 4/4 and 3/4 etc., so it would likely be really different. That Drive. Who episode wherein they bred artificially grown humans, infect them each with all known diseases so that they can develop antibodies/cures. That episode haunts me. NGL. Not necessarily a scientific experiment, but a series of experiments to see how you can control nerve sensations from the brain and whether EPA can create VR that can perfectly mimic the sensation of touch whilst being motionless. As if you're moving and touching something in a virtual world but not in the real world. Is that even possible? Calm down, Akihiko Kayaba. From the time I was born I was sick for 5 straight years, with remissions lasting maybe a week here and there, with the docs scratching their heads as to why. Finally they decided my mom must have Munchausen syndrome. As a nurse and mother, she was very offended by this and told them to do a full-body CAT scan or else she wasn't taking me home. They found out I was born without sinus openings and or polyps in my sinus cavities, can't remember which, and I had to have holes drilled in my head and tubes put in M. Functional endoscopic sinus surgery, or FES, I think it was called. Everything improved after that. Still get sinus headaches a lot, but that's neither here nor there. Force compliance on specific diets with a diverse sample of people and a well-regulated control group. Follow for 10+ years. Is veganism really healthy? How about paleo? Should we never be eating gluten or dairy? Edit to add. This has definitely not been done before because there are several problems with this kind of study. You can't force people to comply to a diet, which is the first hurdle. You could have people voluntarily report what they eat, but this isn't a randomized trial and has its own issues. Recall issues, compliance, self-selection bias, etc. You're also missing a good control group to compare results to. Then if there is a population that follows a certain diet, say people from the Mediterranean following the Mediterranean diet, you run into the problem of correlation versus causation. There could be something different about their lifestyle that is explaining the health differences besides diet. Same issue as above, no control group. There's also the huge issue of not having a longitude study. Most short-term trials examining diets are just that, short-term. It's hard to ascertain if there are health effects show up 10 or 20 years down the road. Also, people claiming that they know what diets are healthy/unhealthy. I'm sure that's true of some diets/types of foods. And research non-experimental data, even with its flaws, can point us in the right direction. I'd feel pretty good saying that eating more vegetables is healthier for the vast majority of people, eating Doritos is not healthy for the vast majority of people. But there is so much we don't know about optimal nutrition and how different populations react to food. I'd love to see an actual high-quality experiment. Second edit. You can't experiment on prisoners. This seems to be a common question. Even an experiment you feel is benign is unethical. Prisoners are unable to properly consent because they, rightly, feel their liberty is at stake for consenting. They are therefore not able to consent to an experiment, which means you can't run it. Most of the laws and norms that were passed stating this were conceived after World War II when researchers were quite literally concerned about preventing the crimes of the Nazis from taking place again. The Gilligan's Island experiment. Shipwreck 100 people with vastly different backgrounds, wealth disparity, and personalities on a remote island. See what kind of civilization grows from it. Then do it 50 more times to check results against each other. Someone wrote a book about this. Basically there are a number of case studies. You might find it interesting, look it up. They're called shipwreck societies. Edit. Wow, this blew up during Thanksgiving. The name of the book is Blueprint by Nick Christakis. The link is here. Enjoy all, happy Thanksgiving! There's also an island in the South Pacific, Pitcairn Island, whose inhabitants, around 50, are the descendants of the mutineers of HMS Bounty. Their society? Basically lots of child rape, which, when brought to trial, included their lawyers arguing that they didn't know rape was illegal. The British government had to build a prison especially for them. At some point, the population at Pitcairn Island got too big, way before the child rape issues, and they moved the entire island population from Pitcairn to Norfolk Island, which is about 1,000 kilometers, don't quote me on that, off the coast of Australia. Some Icelanders arrived on Norfolk and decided to move back to Pitcairn. Norfolk Icelanders have the same independent spirit and are fighting the Australian government over who should control local politics on the island. Norfolk took a huge hit and went broke during the financial collapse circa 2008. Tourism tanked and they couldn't keep things afloat on their own financially. I find both Pitcairn and Norfolk Islands fascinating. Pitcairn may not survive, there are only about 50 to 75 people left, but Norfolk Island has a population of over 1,000 and Norfolk Icelanders carry much of the same culture on a small island, without many of the issue Pitcairn deals with and are now under tighter control of the Australian government. Both Pitcairn and Norfolk Icelanders share the same language and culture. If you can't sleep, YouTube has a ton of amazing videos on both Norfolk and Pitcairn. I think it's fascinating to see the differences between the Pitcairn Icelanders versus the Norfolk Icelanders after years apart.